me spare you of all the superfluous details and jump right in. Squidward's death, otherwise known as the name Red Mist online, is real and to an extent, let's just keep saying it although, that the story you're all familiar with is loosely based in reality. Many of its gruesome plot devices are internationally hyperbolic. The story is littered with grammatical errors and narrative inconsistencies, controversies, and sprinkled with little reference to violence against children that are in poor taste to say the least. Each of these flaws, however, have been deliberately inserted into that ridiculous story for a specific purpose. To clarify what I mean, I would like to ask you all to space yourself in Nickelodeon's shoes. As a large corporation with a reputation to uphold, let's construct with the hypothetical scenario in which one or more of cooperation is reputation to uphold. Let's construct a hypothetical scenario in which one or more of you former employees has expressed an incapability and the desire to tamper with your taped recordings of SpongeBob SquarePants episodes. Despite having your suspicions about which the former employees, in particular the perpetrators, you don't have any solid evidence to prove your identities in the court of the law, and all you have is a reasonable motivation as well as poor circumstantial evidence. All ensured legal investigations eventually arrived at the dead end. You know for sure that the suspects can animate episodes of SpongeBob SquarePants in a way that highly resembles the official episodes. Although there are slight discrepancies in the style and quality of the animation SpongeBob episodes, as all the episodes of the animated media are typically produced by a large team of animators rather than a few people working independently on any of the large studios. A resemblance is clear. It would be bad publicity if the episodes were to air, even if they were broadcast locally rather than from Nickelodeon channel, so you are forced to act. Although conspiracy theorists might have imagined shady corporation practices that could make the suspects disappear, would be a viable solution. There is a preferable alternative, that being reduced to potentially broadcast tapes into obscurity before they could do any damage in the first place. Meeting this end is especially important, as whispers of the rare and disturbing episodes of SpongeBob SquarePants have already begun. Although you can use your influences to try and snuff these whispers out, going for doing years on end would be too far tedious to task. Eventually rumors would slip up through the crevices of your iron fist, and it would all go downhill from there. Enter Creepypasta online phenomenon spreading like wildfires across the web while during the twilight of the 2010s. These dark and horrifying tales were circulated by fans of the horror genre across various message boards and forums, with the express purposes of startling and disturbing whoever was unfortunate enough to stumble across these creepy copypastas. With the sudden boom of creepypasta popularity came an opportunity. If you're unable to incorporate terrifying accounts of lost episodes of SpongeBob SquarePants into ever-expanding creepypasta genre, you serve their association with Nickelodeon. They would ever air, so you got to work. Writing the most cliche internet urban legend you can conceive of. Blood and guts, dead children, all the tropes you can imagine. You can even begin a few tropes of your own that not need to be mentioned here, but once you've finished, you've proudly submitted your work onto the internet. Pulling a few strings, and you witness creation rise to prominence. Joining the elite a few creepypasta icons that have generated attention with millions. Tens as thousands of fan images, amateur videos purporting they contain the real contents of Squidward's death, and YouTube videos discussing the topic of the story came to be. They drown out whatever few forum posts and blogs were asking questions about those eerie episodes of SpongeBob. Your story's success has exceeded to your expectations, as it inspired many spin-offs. Now any internet research for creepy content related to SpongeBob automatically brings you to your Google page after Google page topics unrelated to the topic is that real red mist tapes. Notice how the word tapes is pluralized? Squidward's death is not red mist, rather red mist. It refers to several untraceable notes and tapes, and the contents of which conspicuously ended up in the hands of Nickelodeon's staff studio members. They were given off this because of the name Red Mist had been written in back of each note or tape that was received. The indicating incident which sparked Red Mist occurred the following release of the original SpongeBob SquarePants movie. As most of you may know, Steven Hillenburg wanted the series to end following a movie as he felt that 3 seasons had been enough run for the show. This request was denied as Nickelodeon saw a profit he had to be the franchise, and to them, all that was mattered, and all frustrated Hillenburg causing him to leave the show altogether, with several shows of the original animators and writers. Readers might recall that the original Squidward's Death creepypasta made its odd decision to include Hillenburg in the story as if he were still working at Nickelodeon Studios. To some, this could be considered an innocuous mistake. To others, it would be viewed as another attempt to digitalize stories revolving around lost SpongeBob media, including blatantly false information in them. Let's contextualize the departure of these former Nickelodeon studio employees. As a common knowledge today, writers, especially animators in particular, are not always treated well by the company they work for. It is often the case that the strict deadlines will be set for them and that they must conform to. This can be especially stressful when it takes place in the realm of episodic shows. Oftentimes, this leaves workers of the animated television studio in a catch of 2020 of 222 of sorts. Either they can fail to meet the deadlines and often the expense of their job security or wedges, or they can rush their work, resulting in a sloppy episode that the employees can't be proud of. The writers and animators for the large studios aren't really working out as the hobbyism. These people have dedicated to their lives of craft, spending years of honing over their skills, and so that one day they might be offered the chance to work on a project that will stand out good in their portfolio. Unlike Nickelodeon studio executives, they aren't just in for the money. They have a genuine love for what it is they do. Imagine being in their position, enduring the stress and abuse that they have gone through, and having the television they had shared with the creator of the project that they had worked on rejected. Imagine the frustration they must have all felt as they had chose to leave the studio. They had considered their big break. Imagine the sheer resentment and they held inside of them. Then realized a bit of anger and magnified dozens of times, they echoed each other's agitation amongst the other. The first episode of Red Mist tapes had arrived just a few days after indicating the incident. This would initiate the pattern that would consistently display all these tapes. For the most part, they would display normal SpongeBob SquarePants episodes. Then, often in the middle section of the program, a custom animation would be spiced onto the episode. The first tape, labeled Red Mist, started off fairly mundane prior to the animation spicing. It was only upon reaching the middle episode that the screen flickered and the animation quality somewhat decreased. The screen depicted Sandy's helmet cracking before her suit was promptly filled to the brim with water. Her skin turned to purple and blue as she struggled to breathe for an absurdly long period of time, before she finally passed out and collapsed onto the ground dead. The word of this episode spread around the office quickly. It was received fairly well with amongst the employees and producers, who seemed to be taking it easy as a joke. This was somewhat to be expected, as it wasn't uncommon for animators or artists to create darker versions of their usual work to have some fun. They simply reminded everyone to make sure that their side projects didn't distract them from their work. The first Red Mist note came in not too long after the incident, and it read, "Cease production," and nothing more. The second Red Mist note arrived a week prior to the first one, and the words, "Do you want us to show the world?" It had been inscribbled on the paper. Several weeks passed before the second Red Mist tape had been sent into the office. One more, the middle section of the episode, had been cut out and replaced with the original animation. It showcased Patrick Star extending his stomach out from his mouth, consuming SpongeBob, as he was digested alive from the outside in. SpongeBob stared at the camera in silence. The lighting faded away, leaving only a pitch-black screen as the sounds of dripping and bubbling liquids can be heard. The tapes especially angered the producers, and they abusively demanded the animators to resume their work and stop wasting time. The animators had begun to show signs of irritability as they were berated and bullied by the higher-ups. The third red mist note was rolled in by the following month. "You can't keep avoiding us." The producers decided to stop allowing chatter about all the notes and tapes and continued around the office. They reasoned that if they didn't give a whichever mischievous employees were responsible for the events that were occurring any attention, they would get bored and stopped. This obviously did not work. The fourth red mist note contained the words "broadcasting soon" and nothing more. This time it was accompanied by the third red mist tape, and this tape was different from the rest. The entirety of the episode featured the main cast and several background characters, having been snagged through the jaw by the fishhooks which frequented the show. Their eyes had rolled upwards, and they delicately swung back and forth. Although the tape was dead silent for the first half of the episode, the faint sound of the ocean waves could be heard during the latter half. Although the contents of the tape and the note were not officially disclosed to the employees, that information was still made its rounds amongst the workers. It seemed as if a few people at top felt obligated just to leak such things. The producers hadn't fully considered that those who remained in the studio weren't entirely loyal to them. Still, it appeared as if the message was finally getting through. These people were out and they were somewhat displeased with the direction Nickelodeon was heading with SpongeBob franchise, and they were trying to torment the show into submission. The conservative nature of these episodes and the tapes had begun to sink into the consciousness of the higher-ups. They understood the threat of having uncomfortable content associated with their brand released to the public, and we could all see and worry their faces as each day passed. Though throughout having to explain us all to the public, if the tapes were spread amongst mass fields with their dread, their anxiety would grow exponentially, and the realization that it could get worse. If former employees of the show endorsed the episodes. Finally, the next tape came in. I was one of the few who have seen the Squidward's death episode. I could confirm of everything being written in the original story. Only two elements were true. One, that Squidward did in fact sit on his bed holding a gun to his mouth, and that two, the voice that did speak in the background. At first the voice was only produced faint, incoherent murmurs, but as the tape continued, however, it picked up instantly in pace, and the voice spoke quite quickly, shouting the same phrase on loop. "Do it! Do it! Do it! Do it! Do it!" Upon the fifth repetitive of the voice, a large blast could be heard by the sound of the gunfire erupted from the speakers. Squidward's head was caved in as the bullets entered the skull, spraying his brain matter all over the walls and background. The camera proceeded to zoom into his lifeless corpse as the sound of the ocean waves were ever played so softly. His voice had ceased, and there were moments later as the episode ended. That sent the producers into a frenzy. They proceeded to question those who were in intermediate vicinity, attempting to figure out who had been responsible for the tapes having to be delivered by the higher-ups. It was obvious to them that there were people on the inside of cooperating with on those on the outside. After all, it wasn't like the prior disgraced writers and animators that had just waltzed in and handed the tapes and notes off themselves. It was clear that they had eyes and ears within the studio. They briefly questioned me, but as soon as I realized I was unlikely to be involved, after all, my position in the company didn't entail what I had the ability to create such episodes. Hell, I lacked the authority to even view the Squidward's death episode in the producer's room. Before I can even catch a glimpse of the film, I had been promptly kicked out of the area. During my interrogation, they asked me why I was in the room to begin with. I told them that I had gotten lost traversing the corridors in the office and had accidentally stumbled into the wrong place at the wrong time. It was a reasonable explanation, and it was an explanation they accepted. I was a new guy after all, but still, I was left in a state of dismay following the incident. It was unfortunate I couldn't still view the episode with them. Oh, I would have loved to see the shocked expressions on their smug faces. Ever since I first witnessed how the episode played out, I was ecstatic to imagine how those assholes would react to it. The animators would have really outdone it themselves. Despite my disappointment, wasn't all a letdown. After all, I found it interesting, and they gave me such much of a major role in their fictional account of the episode. Once again, it was completely unrealistic detail for me, who could have been prominent in character. It was probably another way to discredit my illegitimacy of lost SpongeBob media. Stories making them seem utterly ridiculous and unbelievable. Ah well, it is what it is. You can't keep avoiding us. We will find a way to broadcast someday. Somehow. Eyes and ears, we're everywhere. Regardless, a former intern at Nickelodeon Studios.